Welcome to Quick to Listen. I'm your host, Grant Valdes. We all woke up yesterday to learn that David Bowie had died. Actually, I couldn't sleep. It was 3:30 and I checked my phone and saw that he had died on what was Sunday night. And we are mourning this brilliant man and his immense body of work that is absolutely top tier. He's been a huge influence on me. Well, here's a quote, him speaking to the London Telegraph in 1996. There is a time in any teenager's life, I suggest, when, consciously or not, they make the choice between staying on the rails and going off them. Oh yes, and I chose the second course, definitely. I think I fundamentally opted out of a controlled environment, the workaday kind of life that I found repellent, that I just couldn't take seriously. I don't think I ever felt that life was very long. It was certainly no surprise to me that I got old. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I was always terribly aware of its finiteness, and I always believed that if we only have this one life, then let's experiment with it. I feel sad for Bowie's family, and I mourn what he could have done in the future. But at the same time, I feel at peace with him passing because it was something that he was well aware of. He was aware of the finitude of life, and he lived it as fully as he could, not just in a flurry of activity, but in a reflective way. And death was always on his palate. And that's what we're going to focus on today. I've chosen 10 songs of Bowie's that deal with the subject of death, of oblivion. Writing about death can be a way of, you're holding existence up to non-existence, and you're comparing them. The oblivion of death allows us, and allowed him as a writer, to look at our society in a new way, to step outside of it and to reassess it and to enable a kind of spiritual freedom that he embodied. As reflective as Bowie's work could be, and this will be a pretty reflective downbeat playlist that we're going to be listening through together, given the subject matter, it's important to remember that these songs are coexisting with these songs that are just bursting with life and the creative force embodied in fucking.
Black struck the kiss, he kept my cock. Smoke the mistress drifting on. 'Tis a pity she was a whore.
That's an important part of Bowie's message and his aesthetic sense of balance and proportion. So we should just bear in mind how lively and rocking and immediate his songs could be. And also, his way of writing about sex and, of course, visually presenting himself was, scandalous, apparently, at the time. But I think that the frankness with which Bowie wrote about death is actually far more transgressive and deserves to be considered in his legacy as much as the way he confronted sex. I say transgressive because in our Christian culture, we live in denial of death, and without really talking about it publicly or thinking it through. It's our accepted narrative that when you die, you go to heaven, and basically that's literally denying the finality of death and the oblivion of death. But Bowie faced it. So here it is: 10 songs written by David Bowie that deal with death. It just happened to work out to be 10. Many of his songs touch on it, but these are important ones from his whole career. From his first to last album, we start in 1969 with Space Oddity.
This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirt you wear. Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare.
This was released in July 1969 when Apollo 11 was happening, and it was our introduction to David Bowie. It is the first track on his second album, but his second album was released eponymously, just like the first album, so it sort of negated the first album in the public's eye. So this is our introduction to him. Impeccable timing. It has to do with the moon landing that was happening, but it also has to do with what we could call in a broader sense, what NASA's Frank White has called the overview effect. And there's a book about this that I've read part of, that describes the universally experienced cognitive shift in awareness that results from the experience of viewing Earth from space. Quote, he found that with great consistency, this experience profoundly affects space travelers' worldviews, their perception of themselves and our planet, and our understanding of the future. He found that astronauts know from direct experience what the rest of us know only intellectually. We live on a planet that is like a natural spaceship moving through the universe at a high rate of speed. The papers want to know whose shirts you wear. That's the first question that comes up that Earth asks him, which is, of course, petty and irrelevant. And he just says, planet Earth is blue and there's nothing I can do. Though I'm crossed 100,000 miles, I'm feeling very still. And I think my spaceship knows which way to go. This is how we would be seeing Bowie. I say this as if I'm not 31, but this is how we would be seeing Bowie throughout his career. At the end of the song, Major Tom, communications get cut off and he floats off into space. And he repeats, planet Earth is blue and there's nothing I can do. What Bowie is saying right here in the first song is, yeah, Major Tom will die, but so will the people on Earth. And at least Major Tom made it out into space.
Sullen-faced, the village settles down, undetected by the stars. And the hangman plays the mandolin before he goes to sleep. And the last thing on his mind is the wild-eyed boy imprisoned neath the covered wooden shop.
Wild-Eyed Boy from Freecloud was the B-side to the Space Oddity single, and in it we likewise get a protagonist serenely facing his death. The social situation is inverted, however. Major Tom is renowned. He has this official title. He's humanity's hope that's been placed up into the stars as a voyager. The papers want to talk to him. The Wild-Eyed Boy from Freecloud, Freak Loud, that's kind of a pun in there, I think. He's, quote, a missionary mystic of peace love. He comes from a mountain to a village, and the villagers do not take to him. He hasn't done anything wrong. He's tried for gross diversion, but he's locked up in a dungeon, and he will be hung. We meet him on his last night. The image of him in his prison cell illustrates to us the image of him in his prison cell. The image of him in his prison cell contrasted with Major Tom, high above the earth, shows that to be a seeker, you don't have to leave your room. It's an inner journey through which you can achieve the overview effect. In this song, Bowie shows his affinity for what Kerouac called the mad ones. The day will end for some as the night begins for one. Everyone else in the town is falling asleep, and he is wide awake. He faces his fate serenely, the patience in his sigh. When he breaks the night to cry and give his message to them, it's so hard for us to really be really you and really me. You'll lose me, but I'm always really free. they'll lose him when he dies. And this is a town that is undetected by the stars. It's benighted. It's in need of someone like him. What happens after that line in the version of the song that they played in the Spiders from Mars tour is remarkable and one of the single greatest things Bowie did, I think. The song then transitions into All the Young Dudes, which it is the same path that it takes in the lyrics in the folkier, more storytelling studio version. In the studio version, it continues with the tale, and the mountain of Freecloud sort of avenges itself upon the town. A landslide crushes the town, and the boy cries at the sight of this. In the live version, the young dudes are unleashed through this transition, and they are stomping about, and this ancient figure, the boy from Freecloud, his spirit is living on in them. And again, the spirit of Freecloud has avenged itself upon society. So All the Young Dudes, as a side note, is about juvenile delinquent Rex, and it's full of characters. Billy rapped all night about his suicide. Wendy stealing clothes from Marks and Sparks. When Bowie says, "I'm a dude," he's trying on a persona. Same with when he connects himself with the boy from Freecloud. Same with when he connects himself with Major Tom. Now, he's called a chameleon, of course, but what is the point of it all? I think if we look at the big picture of Bowie's identity shifts and wardrobe changes, the point is not what each of those identities was, what each of the outfits is. It's that they change, that he went through so many. He's showing us something about the artifice of our social identities. It's so hard for us to really be really you and really me. There's consistently this message about cutting through the theater of life, playing up the theater, but there's a greater honesty to that, to acknowledging it. Anyone who has identified with David Bowie and empathized with him has bought into that insight that our social identities are malleable and has had a more varied and, in a sense, longer life for it.
I'm frightened by the total goal, drawing to the ragged hole, and I ain't got the power anymore.
I'm torn between the light and dark, where others see their target's divine symmetry. So here Bowie contrasts himself with people whose goal is to be balanced. He's saying, no, I see both the dark and the light, and I'm running at both of them. I want them. He's thirsty for knowledge and wisdom here, and it is tearing him between the light and dark. He talks about Crowley, Nietzsche, Himmler, i.e. the Nazi Himmler here. He talks about reassessing Churchill's lies. These are all people who are reassessing morality itself and reassessing society. And the only word that Christianity gets is, can't take my eyes from the great salvation of bullshit faith. He eventually overheats on all these thoughts and these dense verses, and gives in the chorus. It piles up 2 verses, and then you finally get the chorus.
Don't believe in yourself. Don't
we see that Bowie gets more out of life by not living in denial of death, but by enabling a dialectic between oblivion and life. He seems to be accepting of a life of exhaustedness, seeking after wisdom and knowledge here, and constantly trying to append what he knew on this quest for truth. And he's basically saying, I'll sleep when I'm dead. But that's not a conclusion he could come to unless he really embraced the reality of death. Our next song is 5 Years, the opening track from The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars.
Pushing through the market square, so many mothers sighing. News had just come over. We had 5 years left crying. The news guy wept and told us Earth was really dying.
You know, how much clearer can he be on his driving home of mortality? He never mentions why the Earth is dying. It's just the reality, because we will each die. Now, what happens next is illustrative of Bowie's deep humanity. So after hearing this news, his mind is reeling. I heard telephones, opera house, favorite melodies. I saw boys' toys, electric irons, and TVs. My brain hurt like a warehouse. It had no room to spare. That's the mental overwhelm that he got in the verses of the last song, Quicksand, that he's just sinking in his thoughts and doesn't know where to turn for wisdom. But then the ideas, the noise kind of falls away as the song continues to escalate, and he just notices people, all the people around him, and he just sees them as people. He doesn't see them as, living in a silent film portraying Himmler's sacred realm of dream reality. No, he just sees them as fat, skinny people, tall, short people. The way it's structured, there are 5 lines that end in the word people. And it ends with, I never thought I'd need so many people. I think it's kind of rooted in the blues, and the blues as an idiom, you hear it in the bass lines and the tinkling piano, never leaves his music throughout his whole career. The blues are always about immediate social problems that people are having and the immediate pains they're having. And Bowie's music never gets too heady because there's so often characters populating his songs dealing with just immediate concerns of theirs. Like in this song, so the news has come through. At the beginning, it says, so many mothers sighing. So we see that mothers are taking in the news. Later, there's a mother character who's hitting her child and going off on her child so much that she might kill it. So we can assume that this is a character who is aware of the impending death of the earth and just can't deal with it. A citizen of the town that tried to hang the wild-eyed boy from Freecloud. So we see the costs of not being able to deal with mortality. And what plays out is a sort of overview effect that you get from leaving planet Earth and looking down on it. There's an inversion socially. The girl is his age, so he should be relating to her. And then a black, quote unquote, saves the kid by pulling her off in contravention of racial stereotypes. And he's relating to that person instead. And so it's this sort of breaking open of humanity and empathy. This very song, 5 Years, lit a fire under my ass. It affected my life. I got into it the summer before my senior year, and I felt it, that I had 5 years left until I was out of college and, in the real world. And I could always turn to this song to get this reminder of the urgency of my youth. with Heroes, this was written about, Bowie revealed recently that it was written about Tony Visconti's, the producer of the album, of his Berlin trilogy, his girlfriend who lived in East Berlin, and they were West. And the narrative, however, like the other narratives that I've brought into this collection, is universal. There was sort of this dog run between East and West, where if you passed one wall, you could still be kind of trapped and shot. And so that's where they are when the guards are shooting above their heads. It's, of course, emphasizing the finality of a relationship, or any relationship. As Ray Lynch has put it, to love is to break your heart. Open-heartedness is broken-heartedness, because you will lose those you love. The Wild-Eyed Boy from Freecloud says, "It's so hard for us to really be really you and really me." And this song says, "It's so hard to be us." The scare quotes around the word heroes are really important. So if this scenario actually played out, you'd have these lovers meeting in the middle, and let's say they were gunned down by the guards. They would be considered heroes by a lot of people, but that's a narratizing that would have been put on them after the fact. But this song also is aware of how that sort of playing up of the significance of a relationship happens within a relationship. I will be king and you will be queen. But then the next line, you can be mean and I'll drink all the time. Which is great. You can be mean. It's an observation, but it's also giving her permission to be mean, to be flawed, to be shitty even, if that's who she is. And then it goes back to fantasy in the next verse. I wish you could swim like the dolphins can swim. In the last verse, we're nothing and nothing will help us. Maybe we're lying. Then you better not stay. That knife's edge of doubt and grandeur is reflected in the refrain. It's usually we can be heroes just for one day, but then there's also sometimes we can be heroes forever and ever, like a fairy tale. The way the song ends and fades out, it has built up to a full pop boogie, and it sounds more conventional with these harmonies saying we could be heroes. It's like the mythologizing is already playing out before our ears. The word nothing is used deliberately and throughout the song. So at the end, we're nothing and nothing will help us. It's this wordplay of sort of trusting the oblivion and the nihilism even. Here's where nothing crops up. Nothing will drive them away, them being the ones threatening the relationship. Though nothing will keep us together. And they stand by the wall and they kiss as though nothing could fall. Nothing could fall suggests that the denial that they can fall, but also denial that the wall can never fall. So this hopelessness and a hopefulness right in the line, but also just the word nothing again. So if nothing is the thing that's keeping them apart, if nothing could fall, that's hopeful. And then at the end, again, we're nothing and nothing will help us. You can treat that as a sort of Rosetta Stone. If we're nothing, then we are all the obstacles in the relationship, but also to stay together, we have to just be us, as it says. So again, all the poignancy of heroes comes from the death factor. Ashes to Ashes from 1980's Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. There's a storytelling technique called ring composition. The story reaches a midpoint and then it inverts and mirrors itself backwards to its origin. So it has a symmetrical or circular structure. Bowie's career has this, I believe, in the sense that at this point, 1980, he starts looking backwards. Do you remember a guy that's been in such an early song? And we will increasingly see him doing callbacks to his earlier music, even covering his earlier music at the end. His most recent greatest hits collection, one version, I believe the physical CD version, is chronologically track listed front to back, and the digital version is track listed in the mirror image of that, most recent to oldest, and the cover shows him looking in a mirror. So this is the first song that will return to Major Tom. I don't think Ashes to Ashes should be considered a progression of the plot line of Space Oddity and Major Tom. I think it's a reassessment of him. Bowie is starting to his turn from fantasy. This turn started in Berlin, but he's seeking groundedness. There's a humility to it. He's deconstructing his image. He's showing himself in the music video as a clown. I've never done good things. I've never done bad things. I've never done anything out of the blue. He's copping to a scriptedness. He wants an axe to break the ice, though. He wants to go home. He wants to get back to truth. The same thing he's always wanted, but he's at least now in a position to assess what he's done so far and see what's valid and what's true and what's not of it. So we know Major Tom's a junkie strung out in heaven's high, hitting an all-time low. This is a nadir. This is the all-time low. This is the center point of that ring compositional structure of his career. And when he says, we know Major Tom's a junkie, it's like we always knew. We knew all along that Space Oddity was just him. It was a drug metaphor. Even the title, Ashes to Ashes, articulates this idea of creation as circular. It also maybe suggests a sense of futility that is felt in this particular song, since we are ashes to ashes. Ashes to Ashes is then paralleled with fun to funky. So it's like we're given this option of a parallel sort of shallow, fun, funky life in denial of the ashes to ashes. But he wants to get back in touch with that truth.
All of my life I tried so hard, doing my best with what I had. Nothing much happened all the same.
Fast forward all the way to 1999. Thursday's Child is a love song. It's only about death in the most oblique way, but I want to include it because it articulates very well the themes that emerge in Bowie's later period, plus it's a fantastic song. It continues the deconstruction of the myth that Ashes to Ashes began. It's disillusioning us by actually being almost uncomfortably down to earth. Sometimes I cry my heart to sleep, shuffling days and lonesome nights. Sometimes my courage fell to my feet, which to me suggests like pants falling to your feet. Embarrassing. The video has him looking at himself in a mirror, like in a lengthy way, like doing nothing, just kind of zoned out and just trying to maintain, so to speak, that he's not drawn to the mirror. So he's assessing himself here and his past and how he came to be David Bowie in such a remarkable place. Something about me stood apart. He says, seeing my past to let it go. This song is all about the transformative effect of his wife Iman on him. Nothing prepared me for your smile. He had a whisper of hope that seemed to fail. Maybe I'm born right out of my time, breaking my life in two. And so his whole life seems to be a bit hopeless. And then she's introduced, and that's happened sonically with the female vocal part that comes in as well. And it's a very gentle, innocent voice. And lighting the darkness of my soul, her smile does. And it gives him the gift of innocence and youthfulness again. Innocence in your arms. So he goes from a place of hopelessness before her to a place of wanting and seeing a future. Throw me tomorrow. Now that I really got a chance, everything's falling into place. So this is about death in that it's still Bowie painfully aware of the finitude of his life, but he's basically cherishing the time that he has with this person. The title Thursday's Child comes from a nursery rhyme that helps children remember the days of the week. Thursday's child has far to go. So Bowie is assessing himself late in life, deep into middle age, and saying, I still have far to go. There's something optimistic about that, but also remorseful.
Only for you I don't regret when I was Thursday's child.
Heathen, The Rays, the final track and the title track of David Bowie's 2002 album. The album's liner notes creates this blind character called that we assume is the Heathen, and there's all these books that have been scratched out, and he's both blind and facing books. He's a sort of actor on behalf of oblivion. Here, Bowie's sense of mortality expands beyond his own situation. With these books being destroyed, the world seems to be dying itself, or at least his society. He sees steel on the skyline, sky made of glass. So he's in this man-made world, and nothing's more lasting than a skyscraper. Then the next line is, all things must pass.
All things must pass.
It's unclear whether this particular lyric was written before or after 9/11. Either way, most of the album was written before 9/11. It proves Bowie to be right, because even skyscrapers fall. He sees the sun going down, so the sun goes down, and he can feel it die. The lyric, have I stared too long, to me seems to be an allusion to the Nietzsche line, stare into the abyss, and the abyss stares back into you. The nothing that we saw in Heroes, or there's the line in Ashes to Ashes, the shrieking of nothing is killing me. In the immediate context of the song, have I stared too long probably means staring at the sun, but the sun is going down, leaving nothing but a few rays shooting up high before comes the blackness. You hear it with the horns and the marching beat and the overall upbeat tenor of the song, despite its intensity, that he's marching off to face his death. This is suggested by the way the song was performed live. It was the last song before an encore break, and the band members march off peacefully, calmly, single file, continuing Bowie's image of people going off into the darkness, off to their deaths stoically, like the wild-eyed boy, like Major Tom.
And the rays high, I can see it now. I can feel it die.
He can feel it die. That's the last line. The sun, everything, him, and he has nothing to say to that, nothing he can say but oh. And each time he says oh as this refrain, it's more kind of agonized and involved. To me, it suggests whatever was going on in the head of Steve Jobs when he was dying, and his last word was wow. The title of the song admits that this is how a heathen faces death, but that's who he is. Bowie accepts that. The sense of finality of this album is maybe harder to appreciate now that 14 years passed. In fact, Bowie referred to Richard Strauss's 4 last songs. At the core of the album, Heathen, are the 4 last songs. In fact, it would have been just a perfect EP if it had just been these 4. That's Sunday, 5:15, The Angels Have Gone, I Would Be Your Slave, and Heathen, The Rays. It's a self-conscious final statement. Now, of course, life goes on, and the next year he would make the much more upbeat Reality, but that would continue this looking back that you would expect from the Ring composition approach. Bring Me the Disco King, the last song on Reality, is a re-recording of something he's done before. There are 2 covers, Pablo Picasso and Try Some Buy Some, which were songs that he was going to record earlier in his career. The album before Heathen, or instead of Heathen, was going to be called Toy, and this was an album that Bowie did record of reappraisals of his own material. A re-recording of the song Rebel Rebel from 1974 was released as a B-side for Reality in 2003.
A man lost in time near Cardiff, just walking the dead.
Where Are We Now comes from the 2013 album The Next Day, and the cover of that is remarkable. It's just the cover from the album Heroes with a white square blocking Bowie's face with the stark words, The Next Day. Also in this song, looking right back at Berlin, he is walking through different places in Berlin where he lived when he recorded Heroes, Low and Lodger. And he's again with that producer, Vince Conti. A man lost in time, just walking the dead. Death permeates it, and this looking back, where are we now, is unclear because it's so backwards looking. What brings things back into the present is the moment. You know, and then it follows. As long as there's rain, as long as there's sun.
As long as there's me. As long as there's you.
Again, it feels to me like the end of Heathen, a march off to death, to face it head on. And the implicit second part of these sentences, as long as there's rain, as long as there's sun, as long as there's wind, as long as there's me, as long as there's you, there is not oblivion. There will be oblivion, but as long as there's me and as long as there's you. And the way he brings it back down to me and you is really unexpected, given the how outward-looking and sort of detached the first part of the song is. The video shows him, his face projected onto a 2-headed doll with a woman's face next to him, as scenes of Berlin, like old private reels, are playing behind them in black and white. He has a huge look of sadness on his face. I don't know how his relationship is or was at that time with Aman, apparently quite good. However, there is some drama in his songs, like in Heathen, You Say You'll Leave Me, comes out of nowhere, that line. But that could refer to her just leaving him by dying, I don't know. So I don't know how it is, but he is able to love without fear in this song, which is a progression from the song Heroes. And the simplicity and lack of pretension and continuing deconstruction of his image, really just down to nothing, down to just the point where you can't tell the difference between a paparazzi footage of Bowie walking in the Lower East Side and one of his videos basically continues here. Behind the doll and the screen with the Berlin footage is just a messy studio. And you're just seeing him at work. And there is one shot of him where he's not in doll form and he's just in a t-shirt looking unflinchingly into the camera.
men, in the villa of our men, stands a solitary candle. In the center of it all, in the center of it all, your
Blackstar, you have to watch the video. It's the 10-minute title track and lead single from Bowie's final album, released on his birthday, 3 days before his death. It has really a section A and a section B that are completely distinct songs, and then they blend uneasily in a recapitulation of section A. Section A, I can say all the lyrics right here because it's pretty repetitive. In the villa of Orman stands a solitary candle. In the center of it all, your eyes. On the day of execution, only women kneel and smile. The Villa of Orman is it's a Norse locale. Now, what you don't see in this verse is Bowie. There's no figure. He's absent. This is reinforced by the video in which the spacesuit of a long-dead skeletal Major Tom is found by some member of a future civilization who has a tail, and she treats his skull like a sacred object and removes it. We seem to be in some far future of a different civilization. Western civilization has fallen. Bowie apparently said that the song is about ISIS. You might say that it's about Islamification, or either way, the idea of an expanding Islamic caliphate and territory. But again, he brings it back at the center of it all, your eyes. I think that's the blues man in him, that he brings it down to the human. This section A is in an Arabic key. And then it goes into a middle section that is just a vintage Bowie, mid-tempo, dreamy pop song.
Something happened on the day he died. Spirit rose a meter and stepped aside. Somebody else took his place and bravely cried, I'm a black star, I'm a black star. How many times does an angel fall? How many people lie instead of talking tall? He trod on sacred ground, he cried loud into the crowd.
Bowie is a black star, as he says over and over, who has stepped in and sort of filled the vacuum left by God. In the video, he holds up a sort of alternate reality, black Bible-like book with, instead of a cross on the front, it has a black star. The way he's holding it up, though, is shot like an advertisement with a fake painted blue sky behind him, which I believe is intentional. He's playing up the huckster element of his whole public presentation and as a pop singer.
I can't answer why. Just go with me. I'ma take you home.
I'm gonna take you home. The hips grinding in the video of the three crucified scarecrow figures. But he's conflicted and he's playing with this. He's kind of saying this over and over in his head, as perhaps he internally has to deal with, but also as happens publicly. What is he? He says, I'm not a film star. I'm not a wandering star. I'm not a Marvel star. I'm not a pop star. I'm a black star, over and over. I'm not a white star. So this is an enigmatic but a fair kind of summation of Bowie's philosophical impact. He is part of the antipode in Western thought that is opposed to the Christian. He is about what Nietzsche calls this worldliness. He's about beauty and will and expression and doing it in this life because there is no afterlife. He identifies with the lion, not the sheep. The wild-eyed boy is from a mountain where the eagle dare not fly. He goes higher than anyone's ever been. He's a doer, an explorer, as Major Tom. And he seems to wonder here, maybe that's all it was about me, that I was the someone who was brave enough to stand up and say these things in a pop context to everyone to fill that vacuum. In the song Afraid on Heathen, he says, "What made my life so wonderful?" In Thursday's Child, 3 years before that, he said, "Something about me stood apart, a whisper of hope that seemed to fail." He knows that there's something different about him. That's why he's a star. But here he's wondering more. It's not that he's a star man who's trying to blow our minds. This is more involved about what his effect has been. In a way, in the second section, Bowie is admitting his failure to articulate a platform, as they say in politics. He can only speak for as a voice urging greater uncertainty and continued searching, even if that means deconstruction of the white star world. I don't know how we're meant to see the bejeweled, long dead skull of Major Tom used in an occult ritual, but it's ominous, the day of execution, and it does suggest the idea of his work going out into the world and lasting a very long time, but not being properly understood. And that's all I have to say. If you've listened all the way through this, I'd certainly appreciate it, and check out our other interviews and analyses on Quick to Listen. I've rambled a bit, I know. This is not a normal scripted analysis, but I'm in mourning like the rest of you. So thanks for listening. I think Bowie is, on top of everything else, to be commended for the braveness with which he faced the abyss, oblivion, finitude, death. He is truly a hero for that. I'll put it in quotes because that would make him happier, and it's more honest. But he's a hero.
This is our number. Oh, my trials, Lord, will be remembered. Everything has changed.